We are here.
We are here
With
at City Winery.
I was going to say with Michelle Bell.
With Michelle.
At City Winery.
Oh, we are here.
Yes, with Michelle Bell at City Winery in Nashville. And we've known you for a while now. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's been like, I feel like the first time you were here was 2020, right?
Yeah.
Before the pandemic hit? Because it was nice because we came for brunch.
No, I don't know, was it?
It was the...
It might have been right before, or it was right when it started.
It was
we
right
had to
when
do
it
everything
started,
outside.
yeah. Oh yeah, because we were in the tent.
Yes, so you've made it through. We've made
Yeah.
it through
Somehow.
on the other side. But you're always so fun to talk to, and you love wine, and you're just the sweetest person. And she's an amazing winemaker. She's the winemaker here at City Winery, and you know, you've been in the wine industry for a really long time. So, and this is Michelle Bell. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, like your background and how you got to be here and everything.
Yeah, well, thank you, first of all.
Yeah.
So I'm from California originally. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is nice and cold and very different from Tennessee in many different ways. But I really got into wine kind of in my early 20s. I just was always excited to learn about it. And I would have friends where we would go to Napa and go tasting, and they'd be like, yeah, let's get wasted. And I'd be the only person talking to learning about it. And I'd be like, no, I really want to talk to them and figure it out. It was so interesting to me. And you know, for most of my 20s, I actually went to school to do musical theater and was doing that and was on tour, and we would stop in these little towns, and I just became more and more interested in wine and decided to take a break kind of from acting in my mid-20s, and then on a limb was maybe I'll work in a tasting room in Paso Robles, and my parents relocated out there, and so it kind of was kismet in a way, and I started working at Ancient Peaks, which is a really awesome winery, estate, vineyard. I think they've got, it's 200,000 acres on their property. Wow. It's the entire town of Santa Margarita, which is a really awesome old historical town that's nestled between Paso Robles and San Luis Obispo. So it's got I think 4 different microclimates, 8 different soil types, all on these 200,000 acres.
Okay.
And they've planted grapes on, I want to say it's 25,000 of those acres. Then the rest of it they have cattle. So it's the most employed cowboys, that's their actual job.
Really?
In the country is within their property.
That's so unique.
Wow.
Yeah.
So is that Central Coast, or is that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's Central Coast.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was there for a long time and just really working the tasting bar, and started kind of doing more work, enjoying my work with customers and things like that. And then I got the opportunity to go up north to the Sierra foothills to a much smaller winery and manage their wine club and do more outside sales. And then with that, you know, working with smaller wineries, you do a lot more than you're ever supposed to do. Mm-hmm. You start out doing one thing and you begin to do other things. And I started doing vineyard work, which I thought was just super fun. And so this family I was working with, the Tanner family, Tanner Vineyards is where I was working. They had about 200 acres and about 45 of that was planted. And so I would get up at 6 a.m. and go out in the vineyard on an ATV and start pulling samples of grapes. And I was helping with the bulk grape sales, and so really started getting more into the production side of things, which was just so cool to me. And getting to be there on days when we pick, and just, you know, there's nothing better than being on a vineyard at 5 a.m. when the sun is rising, and there's bunnies and birds and things, and you're just riding through the vines.
Yeah.
And I remember I used to get cuts and stuff, because you sometimes the overgrowth on the canopy will get super intense, and you just have to ride through it. And so I'd spray perfume and be no. It would all seep into my cuts and stuff. But I got really into kind of more that side of things, and in these really small communities and in these family-owned vineyards, there's not a lot of growing that you can do. in your position. And so for me, I was like, I really want to get experience actually in the cellar and making wine and doing all of that, but there just was not a place for that, I think. And a couple people had told me, there's not really like a place for a woman in the cellar, and kind of, I'm very petite, and so your size can make a difference, but also like people there, we're not moving to other places. Everyone's really settled in their work. So I kind of figured, okay, I'm either going to go back to Paso Robles maybe, or another part of California, or I was thinking about going to Oregon, and I was like, but I'm just going to take a little break. And so I came out to Tennessee to work at a theater with an old friend of mine out in Clarksville. And then once I finished up my work there, I had also met my husband in that time and was like, oh, well, I like this guy, so what do I do? And then this huge snowstorm hit in January of the following year. And so I was kind of like, we were stuck in the house, I remember, for like 2 weeks. And in that time, the assistant job had been posted for here. And so I was like, oh, well, that would be perfect. I'd love to like actually be in the cellar doing stuff.
So like an assistant winemaker? Okay.
And Bill Anton, who's my old boss, was at the time the winemaker. And I reached out to him and was like, I would love to do this. And, I have some good general knowledge, but in my mind I was like, I've got to have at least more experience than I would think most people walking around in Tennessee, doing cellar work. And I remember being like so scared that I wasn't experienced enough, but we got along really well. And, what I knew was more than I think a lot of other people. And I was like, I'm moving here, so I'm like ready to get into this. And it just like ended up working out. So
wow.
Yeah.
So how long were you the assistant winemaker for?
I was here for like a year and a half, and then I did take like a little break when he left, and they were bringing in another winemaker, and I got an opportunity to work at the Grand Ole Opry doing a show there. And so I was like, there was like a little bit of jumbling around, and I was like, I'm just gonna wait till the dust settles and then see where it takes me from there. So I worked at the Opry, and then I really missed winemaking. Like, I thought that I missed acting a lot, but I was like, no, I kind of miss like weekends and being home and in the evening and like all the things that come with
growing up.
Yeah and like just wanting to be like a regular person with a regular job. Like, oh, I hate singing Christmas songs 3 times on Saturdays. And so then I was like interested in coming back, and the winemaker who had come in the interim was like, oh, actually, well, I'm leaving. So it's working out well. And that was like January of 2020 was when I was coming back in. And then as he was phasing out was like when everything shut down.
Oh.
So I think March. So he was like, had like 1 week with me where we were gonna overlap and go over things. And then I remember our bottling line had like broken in the middle of a bottling, like completely, this $250,000 piece of equipment that is just a tank of a piece of equipment broke down. And we were like shut down the next week, and I was like, well. So then we spent like a month fixing it because we had nothing else to do.
Right.
Oh man.
So he came in, and we bonded a lot because I was like, we were underneath this machine for weeks, and so I can fix any bottling. I'm really good at it. But so then I've just kind of like mostly been by myself here ever since because, we were shut down for a long time in a way, but of all of our locations, we were the most open.
Really? Oh, wow.
Mostly because we had the tent outside.
Yeah, that outside tent was really nice.
Yeah. And, but also Tennessee had the least amount of restrictions, I think, for businesses. And because we were able to do so much like outdoor work and just have masks going, we were able to kind of make it through, which was crazy. But
did it ramp up like a lot in this last year?
In some ways, I think our business has really amped up a lot. I'd say the wine production is pretty much the same. Last year, we took on a lot of crop to make up for like 2020. Then this year we took a little less because we had so much from last year, and I think with my pregnancy, they were like, let's be gentle.
Oh yes, you're
with
pregnant.
her.
We didn't mention that.
Yeah. Oh yes.
For the
I'm
people
pregnant.
that are just listening on the audio. So how's that been, being pregnant and not being able to have the wine? Well, you can still taste it and spit it.
I can taste it. I spit it. I was telling TJ earlier that it's just like physically so much more of a hindrance than
Really?
like not being able to lift things because I'm such a like.
You are very petite. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm usually like, I'll just move these things, and people will be like, no. They'll come in and make sure I'm not lifting anything. But you know, like a case of wine is like right at the threshold of like what you're not supposed to be lifting.
It's always the tiny ones you got to worry about. We're a strong force to be reckoned with. It's very
just watching
true.
her drive the forklift. So
I know.
You're a beast.
Which that I can do.
You can still do
Well,
that.
yeah.
You
Thank God. Like if I couldn't drive the forklift, I think I would be like in a depression. That's my baby. So, you know, but luckily everyone is like so helpful. And
Oh yeah.
I have an assistant right now who's been great, and he gets a workout because I don't get to. So
She was saying when you weren't here off camera and off video that she was in Napa with the other winemakers, pregnant, tasting, you know, wines for.
that was really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went out in May to kind of look at all of our vineyards, which we'd like to do every year, but we haven't been able to do it for the last few years. So it was me, the winemaker from Chicago, Atlanta, Hudson Valley, and then our boss, our chief winemaker, David. And it was like right when I found out I was pregnant.
Oh,
I think I found out I was pregnant like Mother's Day weekend.
I mean, amazing. But
Yeah. I was like, yeah, I'm so happy. And then we were all going to Napa, and I was like, of course. And then after Napa, our friends were getting like married in Vegas, and so I was like,
man.
yeah, and so I couldn't drink anything the whole time I was there. And it's great because you're like with all these vineyards and winemakers, and all they want to do is like give you stuff to taste.
Yeah.
You have to be like,
yeah. I'm sorry.
can I have a spit bucket?
Yeah.
Like I'm gonna be that person, but you know. But it was still really cool. A lot of what we were doing was like looking at the vineyards, and frost was really bad this year in California. So I'd say we probably got like half of what we were supposed to get.
Wow.
Like it was just, especially our Mendocino vineyards, like they just got rocked. And like when you're out there and you see how high up the elevation is, you can see on the vines too, like that frost damage. It almost looks like they got burnt.
Wow.
It's a really weird.
And then you can't even use them?
Because they just don't produce.
So-
All the little, the buds and the little grapes that start to grow, like they just get destroyed. So
That's so sad.
I know.
So does City Winery own vineyards out
vineyards?
there? Or do they just kind of...
We source.
Source stuff,
Yeah.
okay.
We do have like 2 planted acres at our Hudson Valley location. But we haven't really like pulled anything from it yet. Because typically you want like 3 to 5 years of growth before you can really pull from those grapes. That's also been the biggest like hindrance in me doing local crop, is I've just been like waiting for these local vines to kind of come to fruition. Pardon the pun. But yeah, so we have like our favorite vineyards that we get. So Alder Springs is a huge one for us in Mendocino. Bettinelli, which we'll have, is an amazing vineyard in Napa that's like, I mean, the wait list is super long. Opus One gets grapes from them.
Wow.
Screaming Eagle sources grapes from them. And you're not allowed to know like what blocks and rows belong to people. So each of the rows has a little picture, and it's like a symbol that represents, I think ours is like an olive branch, but there's like, you know, an eagle, and it's like, okay, well, we know.
It's
know
not
who that
screaming,
belongs-
but...
yeah, like I can guess. But it's like pristine. Like I've never seen vines the way that theirs are. They've trained them to be like eye level, and you can look and just see like hanging grapes. There's no extra like
Whoa.
leaves or anything. It just is like,
Amazing, you can train them like that.
because the guy who, Larry Bettinelli, who planted the vineyard, like he maintains vineyards. That's
Yeah.
what he did for the longest time in Napa. and he worked with people who pick, and he was like, how do I make them happier and not have to like, because everyone else you have to like bend over and they just break their backs.
Oh, so he did it with like making it easier for the workers. Wow.
So they just are like, they can mosey right along and just see everything hanging down. I have some photos I can show you guys.
Awesome.
But yeah, and then we have some Sonoma vineyards. All of our Chardonnay usually comes from Scopus Vineyards, which is beautiful. Same thing where they just like, you know, grow a certain amount and allot it for certain vineyards, and they have no desire to grow anymore. They just like their customers, and that's who they grow it for. And then we have some other vineyards that will like change it up every year. It's great because we're not restricted by what's here. So we're not like, oh, we have 5 acres of cab, we have to do a ton of cab, and then that's it. You know, we can pick and choose. And David will go out while they're picking in California, and sometimes we'll just find stuff like that. Someone's like, oh, this, you know, winemaker didn't pick up 3 tons of Petite Sirah.
Do you want it?
Yeah. And he's like, yep, put it on the truck.
Wow.
It's like, so we never know what we're getting.
Yeah.
Like as much as we try to plan and buy yeast for what we think is coming, we'll get a call and be like, just kidding, you're not getting, like I thought I was getting Mourvèdre this year and Pinot Noir and I think Syrah, and I got Zinfandel, Cab Franc, and Cabernet Sauvignon. So
well, you got to be more, I guess, really flexible with what you're going to do and just kind of figure it out on the fly.
Yeah. We have like 3 days notice. They have team drivers drive them out, and then we find out when it gets here.
Wow. So you poured some wine for us.
Yes.
So what are we drinking? Well, what's the first thing we're drinking?
The first thing I've got is a reserve Pinot Noir. So this is, we call it our Cuvée Justice. This comes from the Justice Vineyard in Oregon, so Willamette Valley. Really small. This was like a small allocation, so I think I only have 4 barrels of it. But I love Oregon Pinot, and we usually always have like a California Pinot and an Oregon Pinot. It's a 2019. It's just really beautiful fruit. And they've been a vineyard. I don't think we got any Oregon crop this year. Just there was a lot of issues with Oregon weather and everything going on, and then the fires, and it's also typically just, it's gotten harder and harder for us to ship the grapes here, because right now we facilitate all of our grapes out of a shipping company in Lodi. They're Delta Packing, so they pack like cherries and grapes and all kinds of other fruit, but it works really well for wine grapes too. But for Oregon, we have to use different trucks and different packing facilities, so it's getting harder and harder.
I love the smell.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful Oregon. I love Oregon.
How many bottles can you get out of a barrel? Normally?
25 cases.
Okay.
So I'm not going to do that math off the top of my head.
Yeah, 25 times 12.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
I get some like strawberry licorice.
Yeah. And this was in barrel for a really long time. It just kind of
this is so good.
was heftier, and so I knew immediately, like, okay, this is going to be reserve.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Oh, I love it too. It's my kind of Pinot Noir.
This time of year, I know.
Yes.
It's like,
this would be great with turkey.
Don't people say that a lot with Pinot Noir? That Pinot Noir is kind of like a Thanksgiving type wine.
I think that's why, like, especially like Beaujolais Nouveau always comes out this time of year. And for me, it's like just to ease into like winter. I start getting into Pinot first, and then, you know, my palate will darken as it gets colder and colder, but it's the most versatile for me because you can have fish. It's the only red wine you can have fish with. And for me, like, cranberry sauce and cinnamon and like pumpkin and all those things
go really well with it.
Yeah. And those flavors are present, so it's super easy to pair in that way. But
this is delish. So we were talking before this too about turkeys, and you said you won a turkey competition?
Yes. The City Winery Turkey Competition. Which, like, I was very proud about too. So
Are you competitive?
Yes, incredibly. And I
went all out on it. The turkey.
And was like talking trash about it.
Oh, you're a
talking
trash talker.
trash about
Yeah.
people.
I was like,
is that normally? I mean, you're normally a trash talker.
probably
competition.
for
okay.
sure. Yeah. So I try not to enter too many competitions, because
Have you entered like a chili competition before? Those can get pretty
No.
brutal. People get really intense about. Well, do you like chili?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've talked to people that do that, and they get like really. Like my sister cried when she lost. I was like, I'm sorry.
I mean, it's a personal thing. Like,
yeah, but it's not like her chili was bad.
Right.
It just wasn't the best.
yeah, which I would never be able to mentally handle. Like, I've done a couple of like tastings and stuff, and we always do tours and things, and like every now and then someone will be like, "Oh, this wine is horrible," and I'll be like,
They say that?
yeah. People, I get like, they used to send us our reviews every week, and I would get so defensive about like it. You can't not take it personally.
But
then some people are like, "This is the best I've ever had," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay." Like,
But I think
that cancels out the
I think
balance.
people are just like that with wine though. Like everyone's palate is so different.
yes, absolutely.
And I mean, like there's some that we think are like amazing. Like I think there's this one that it was like a special reserve that came in at Trader Joe's like 2 years ago. It was like, I don't know, it was like maybe $30, but it was amazing. But I had a girl that she was pretty new to wine, and sometimes I think if you're new to wine, some of those like really dry Italians or French, like you shouldn't. I don't really think you should start off with those. Yeah. And she heard us talking about it, and she was like, "Well, I'm going to buy it." And I told her, I was like, "Just so you know,
this is not like
this is not." Yeah, like it doesn't have. It's not super fruity. And she returned it like the next day. She was like, "That was the worst wine I've ever had in my life." And I'm like, "Well, if that shouldn't be your starting point.
In 10 years, you might love that wine. But
You will appreciate it.
yeah, I mean, I always say, like, if you know what you like, that's the first step in tasting wine. Like, and you're able to verbalize it and express what you like about it, it's going to make such a difference in how you enjoy wine. Like, I think a lot of times if people don't like certain wines that we make, it's because like a server wasn't listening to them or they didn't know how to communicate what they do like. Because I would, when I was managing tasting rooms, I would always tell our staff, like, do not try to force a wine on somebody. And do not try to like tell somebody they're wrong because they don't like it.
Right.
That's how you get people being like, well, I don't like any of these because they're not what I like. So I'm going to tell people the wines are bad. And so, like, if someone's telling you, I like sweet stuff, don't try to get them to taste, the reserve cab because it's not going to be sweet at all.
Well,
Like, get them in the direction. Or, like, food changes wine so much and it can make it so much more approachable. So, yeah, I mean, there's such a...
You have something of like everything here too, don't you? Do you have some sweet
We
wines
do,
here?
yes. We finally took the plunge into sweet stuff, which is so like foreign to me, but you can't be in Tennessee and not have sweet wine. So we have our debutante, which is our like classic kind of sweet white blend, and then we're about to release, it's called the Paramour, which is like the red, sweet red.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which is a blend. It's Petit Syrah, a little bit of Pinot, some Cab, some Sangiovese, but it's like heavy, sweeter, kind of port style. Not as high as alcohol.
Yeah, which typically I think some of the sweet ones aren't, which was actually interesting. We were watching Shark Tank last night, and they had like this new wine company, and they're the second largest like black-owned wine, like sweet wine company, like in America.
Country,
yeah.
Whoa.
And they're out, but their wines are at like 13%. So they're trying to make a sweeter version of a wine, but have it be at 13%. So it's more of like a premium sweet wine.
Yeah.
But I thought that was pretty cool that they're taking a different approach to sweet, because sweet is usually at like what?
9,
lower.
8%, yeah. And it's just the method. In which
The
you
method.
make it.
Yeah. So I'm like, I wondered how I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, ours are gonna be higher, like probably 12 to 13, because we are adding the sweetness to it.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, the best way to make a sweet wine, or like the most traditional, is you ferment it until it's not quite dry.
Gotcha.
So all of our wines are fermented dry.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get, anywhere from 13 to 15% alcohol on them, maybe 12 for the whites. And then we'll add in the sweetness later with either like concentrate or just straight up sugar.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I love that y'all have a good representation of everything, because I do feel like that, like, you have something for everybody here to drink. And I think that there are so many people that it's cool if they only like sweet wine, because I'm like, yeah, then that's a good stepping point, and you're still drinking wine, you know? I mean, like, it's not for me personally, but I hate when people say like, oh, sweet wine sucks. I'm like, there's a category for it, and it actually can be really good.
There's a time and a place
for
sweet wine too. Like, I mean, if you're having like blue cheese or desserts, like, it's can really take off some of that sweetness if you pair it with the right thing. You know, port is not always everybody's cup of tea, but if you're having it with the right, you know.
Oh, I think with cheese, it's
blue
amazing.
cheese, gorgonzola, like all of those stinky soft things. Yeah.
You want to try the next one?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So this one, it's got our little Harvest Fest label on it, but this is our new Reserve Merlot.
Now, do all the city wineries have the same wine selections?
Not always. So the biggest thing that I think is kind of cool, and usually we try to get together like once a year and taste each other's stuff, but we'll often get similar grapes or the same grapes, and then everybody makes them in like different styles.
That's what I was going to say. The winemaker probably has their own style to it and makes things taste a little different than other winemakers. So.
And especially us, like, versus Chicago or New York, like, there's different audiences. So not everybody wants the same style. You know, the whiskey barrel aged stuff for us is huge here.
You saw a lot of that.
A ton. Like, it has just done so
because
well
it's
for
so
us.
good.
Yeah, it's so good. Oh my
we were
gosh.
talking about that off air, but I was like, that whiskey barrel cab, Tennessee whiskey
It was
barrel.
it was actually one of my favorite ones I've had
I
from
still
y'all
dream
too.
about it
It was
now.
really,
Yeah.
really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an interesting, different thing that I think we're privileged in being so close to distilleries and having access to them. And, you know, we don't have to ship the barrels across the country. We can just, like, I'll get my husband's truck and fit 5 in the back of them and drive them back over here. And it's such a different stylistic thing that we're able to do that really just adds a special something.
So was there not a lot of that in California?
No. I remember the first time I had ever had a whiskey barrel aged wine was probably 10 years ago. Maybe like 8 years ago. But I had seen it online. I was starting to do my like sommelier training because I started doing that before I realized like, oh, that's not really what I want to do. Yeah. Like in doing that, I was like, this is not what I like. We're not talking about how we make this or anything. Like I was more curious about that, and we're just talking about like geography and selling it. That was great for vocabulary.
Yeah.
But so I was subscribed to all these like newsletters and stuff, and there was a Spanish Syrah that they were aging in Pappy Van Winkle barrels.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, that's
interesting.
And so I ordered a couple bottles of it, and it was like $50 a bottle, which I was like, okay.
Better be really good.
Yeah. Which, you know.
Was it that good?
It wasn't the greatest, and I couldn't really taste any whiskey on it, which I thought was interesting. And it came with like a twist cap too, so I was like, like what is, you know, a $50 bottle of wine with a twist cap? What does that mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, it was fine, but I was like, there has to be a way that you like, you know, so that was always my thing, was like, there's got to be something you can gain from it. Like, I have to imagine it must get better. And so the first wine that we ever put in whiskey barrels here was in 2018. We ended up trading Nelson's Greenbrier out in Germantown, 60 gallons of some Pinot Noir to distill into brandy. And then in return, we got a couple whiskey barrels. And so our brandy is still aging over there. And then we have some of the distillate, just the like White Lightning version of it, that we'll use eventually to make a port style here, but our brandy is still aging there. And like every year I go and check on it and I'm like, how's it doing? When do we get to taste it? But we put Petite Sirah in the whiskey barrels, and I just remember like filling them up and being like, this smells so good.
Yeah.
Like it smelled like blackberry pie, delicious. So I was like, I feel like this is a good thing and it's gonna do well. And we ended up just blending it back into our Petite Sirah because we weren't really prepared for how to market it and all that stuff yet. And then finally, in 2020, I was like, let's do some cab and let's keg it and see if people like it. And it just started flying.
And took off.
Yeah. That cab is so good.
Yeah.
Like I told you, it didn't taste like manipulated. It tasted like you definitely got the whiskey and the barrel on it.
Yeah.
And just the blend of that with the cab it's so good.
So good.
Yeah. I always tell people to have like a little sidecar with it, like just to kind of see.
Yeah.
But I mean, it definitely is like, if you like whiskey, then you're gonna like it.
Yeah.
If you're like not a whiskey drinker, I don't know how it would come off. I think people don't go for it as much, but you know, there are some folks, especially here in Tennessee, who are like, I don't drink wine, I drink whiskey.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is your gateway wine.
That's
Totally.
a whiskey drinker's wine.
Yeah.
Definitely. I love the nose on this.
Yeah, let's talk about this one.
Yes. So Merlot, this comes from the Anderson Valley. So do you know like Sierra Nevada brewing and all of that? So that same little area. And this was just a fun little off area that we were able to source from. Normally we get our Merlot from Washington State. We haven't done too much California Merlot. Also like 20% of Merlot was pulled up 10 years ago because of that Sideways movie.
That's so sad.
They pulled up 20% of the Merlot
Because of a
because
movie.
of a
California.
movie.
Yeah.
Because the sales just dropped. They plummeted.
People were like, we don't want that anymore.
And so they
that
just
movie
pulled it
made
up.
fun of it.
20%.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's made a comeback since then?
I think so, a little bit. I think people are, first of all, you know, like most of the people who drink wine now are in their 20s and probably haven't seen that movie. And I don't know. My goal has always been to like try to make Merlot cool again.
This will do it. This is a great Merlot.
Love it.
And more like in the style of a cab, like spicy and peppery and
the tannins.
Not too like light. I think a lot of times.
Right.
You know what though? I think the problem is that so many people just tried like the house Merlot at like Ruby Tuesdays, and that was what kind of like gave them a bad feeling about Merlot.
Is that what you did?
Yeah, I did that. I went to TGI Fridays and got the house Merlot. I mean, I think that people, that's like their introduction to Merlot, and it's like, Merlot is one of like the top wines, I would say, that's blended in most really great blends, especially in France. You know,
Bordeaux's,
and this is really great. I think if you have a good representation of it, and you're not just getting like a cheap kind of crappy blend of it. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's also like been one of those wines that is so mass produced cheaply that your perception of it is like the artificial elements that often go into like bulk winemaking.
Yep.
So like the tannins aren't genuine tannins, they're artificial, and it's a very like fake kind of weird feeling. Like I can just tell if something's got artificial.
So you can taste
tannins.
that like right away.
Yeah. I mean, it tastes almost like a cross between like potpourri and rubber, and it clings to your palate in a very like weird, kind of like how you know something's got like stevia or
like
fake
you can
sugar.
taste it.
Yeah, it like is very weird in the palate. But that's, you know, if you're one of these giant wineries that you're producing it in these huge stainless steel tanks and it's never going to see a day in barrel, and you just stick a bunch of like artificial tannin or like wood staves in there, you know, essentially like a big tea bag full of wood chips that have flavor on them, that's what you're gonna get out of it.
So how long did this stay in the barrel?
This was probably about 16 months.
Love it.
You know, like about this Merlot too, is like after you swallow, like it just, you keep tasting it. Like it just hangs out.
Yeah.
Like it just.
It's a good taste.
And
I still taste it.
Grippy. It's got that. Like,
it is, yeah.
tannin. But it's balanced. It's not like pure tannin.
Oh,
A lot of stuff can just be like, you know, all the moisture is gone from your mouth.
No.
I'd love to drink this with like some cheese. Havarti.
There's a lot of cheese talk in this podcast.
What, really?
You guys are talking about stinky cheese and stuff.
I'm sorry. I'm just like cheese.
I'm
going to talk about cheese. Yeah.
Did you know that there's a cheese trail?
What?
In Nashville?
Really?
What do you
Yes.
mean?
If you Google cheese, there's a cheese trail.
Does it include wine?
No, I don't know. But you go along and it's like a wine trail only with cheese.
Okay, side note, I have to tell you guys something.
Cheese trail, Asheville.
I actually had a dream that, well, this is like a goal of mine. If I ever like had a lot of money, I wanted to create a theme park called Cheese World.
Oh, I would go.
No,
it
would
be your first season ticket.
Everything, all the rides would be like cheese themed, and like you'd get like there'd only be cheese to eat, like, or cheese like related items, and like it would like have wine, but like everyone would have to like wear like cheese hats, and like it would be all about cheese.
It'd be amazing.
Cheese World. I think people would go.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I don't know. I don't know where it would be. I thought Wisconsin, but then I'm like, does anybody really want to go to Wisconsin? I don't know.
I'd say like, I mean, anywhere there's.
Yeah, but people like don't really go to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe they do. I don't know.
Maybe like Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
Do some cheese production. I'm in. Like I'm.
Yeah. Cheese
World.
So if I win the Mega Millions, which I think I might, then
We're opening Cheese World.
That's what we're doing.
I'm excited.
All right.
You could have like a fondue world and like, you know, an Italian theme.
Yeah, and like you'd have bumper cars, but they'd be cheese wheels.
That'd be amazing.
Everything. You can make it all cheese.
Yeah. And you could still have like people dressed up like mice and stuff.
Yes!
Oh,
Mice!
This is a big idea. This is huge.
It's a great idea. So if you're listening to this and you steal my idea, I know who you are. Okay?
Yeah, we will find you.
All right, let's try the last one.
So is it a true statement that screw top wine is more expensive than doing cork?
I mean,
I've heard that.
But remember, we mentioned this before, that it seems like Pinot Noir has a screw top a lot.
yeah, I think
I'm thinking from a cost perspective. Is it cheaper to do? Because I know the quality of wine. It doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't mean it's a poor quality of wine to have a screw top.
No, not at all.
But is it more expensive or kind of the same to do it?
I mean, the thing that stands out to me the most is that the machine you have to get to put that screw top on is a lot more expensive. So the cost
That's more expensive?
Yeah, and then the glass too. Well, if you're a winery, like most folks have a bottling line or they hire out a bottling line to come and bottle stuff for them. And there's a cost that comes with that, but like with glass and everything too, you have to get a whole different bottle.
Right.
It's
a whole different setup.
Application of the capsule. I know too that they recommend you take out like insurance on capsuled wine or twist cap because there's more chance of them becoming faulty. And in shipping and things, more things can happen. The town that I used to work in, there was a winery that I remember they had to like pull all the bottles that had screw caps because they weren't completely screwed on by the machine that did it.
Oh, okay.
So they started noticing like under a pallet that there was wine accumulating, and so they had to like flip the pallet over, like saran wrap the whole thing, flip it over so that it would stop, because you store wine upside down.
Yeah.
And then like start pulling bottles and
what a nightmare.
seeing what didn't get poured out. So I think they like recommend. So there is extra cost that comes with it, but I don't know. I mean, cork is expensive, but it's not that expensive. It's probably like anywhere from like 5 cents to 15 cents, maybe 30 cents a cork. I think for natural cork, it's about 30 to 35 cents a cork. For, you know, artificial rubber corks, you're looking at like 3 to 5 cents. And then we use predominantly these Diam corks, which are guaranteed for, these are Diam 10, so they're guaranteed for 10 years. And they're guaranteed to not have TCA, which is the cork disease, in them. and these are probably 20 cents.
Okay.
But you can get them like 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, so it just depends.
Depending on how long you're trying to age it.
Yeah, these are both natural.
What would be the purpose that people use the synthetic corks?
Cheaper?
Is it cheaper?
Cheaper. They're guaranteed for longer. These are, they're not synthetic, but they're genetically like modified corks.
GMO corks.
There's nothing bad about them.
There's such a thing.
But they use real cork and they just treat it for
Yeah.
TCA and then, you know, put it all together. So these are pretty popular, I'd say, especially like coming out of California, but also like the world of glass and cork was so challenged when everything shut down in the pandemic. Like this Pinot bottle is so heavy and thick, and we never use glass that big, but that's like all that they had left.
Wow.
So that's what you got.
Mm-hmm. So when it's next to our like older vintage wines, it looks huge and gigantic. And I'm like, oh man, our Syrah looks so tiny. Like, I'm sad. But yeah, and then like cork too. Like you used to be able to be like, yeah, I need cork next week, and they would just send it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the one that doesn't have the label.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay.
We haven't.
It's really
The
good.
labels are coming. So yeah, this is Bettinelli Vineyards 2019 Reserve Cab. I don't know if I'm allowed to say how much we pay per ton, but I could tell you that it's like probably
I love this.
3 times as much as the other vineyards that we use. It's very
Seriously.
expensive, yeah. But it's like, you know what you're getting every time, and it's beautiful and clean.
What
and
percentage cab is this?
100%.
100%.
This
Yeah.
is so good. See, and recently,
I love the nose on this thing.
I love
can't
everything
smell
about
I mean,
it.
it's like leather, graphite,
it's
just like, ugh.
Everything you want.
and
in a
I'll say
cab
this,
on the
normally
nose.
we don't really like talk too bad on certain wines, but we did try the, you're good, the Platinum Reserve Cab that came in at Trader Joe's, and like usually the Platinums are supposed to be like, okay, these are these like elevated wines most of the time. They're all from California, that they're getting at a really great price because they're a lot like Costco, or you know, it's
They're sourcing them.
right. They're sourcing. In reality, it's like a $30, $40 value, but they're selling them for $14.99. The Platinums, we only get them in during the holidays. We tried the Cab, and it was like, and I don't know if you can tell me what this. Maybe it's just the acidity is what I'm thinking, but my gums were like throbbing as I was drinking this wine.
Gosh.
I mean, I was like feeling, I was like, this is like, and it might, the acidity, I'm thinking, and like the citrus in it and all that, but it was like, I was like, what? It was just so intense. Did you try it? Yeah, I was like, I
didn't
just,
have that issue.
I feel like it was
I
like
remember you telling me.
stripping, like
I felt like tingling, like pain in my gums, and I'm like, I couldn't even. I mean, the Pinot Noir Platinum that we got this year was awesome, but that Cab, I mean, it was just so tart. And other people tried it at the store too, and they were like, so tart. And this is like, trying this, it's so freaking smooth. Like, it just eases down. I don't feel any of that gum happening. Like, what do you think exactly that was?
I mean, I would just think it was probably
The acidity?
Probably a combination of the acidity and the tannin. They typically are pretty well balanced, but if you have like a high alcohol, you're usually not going to have high acidity. So if it's a little bit, I mean, this is like 15-1 probably.
You wouldn't even know.
Yeah. But also, like, I refused to bottle this until I knew that it was going to be ready. Like, a big thing I think that's changed with wine that maybe not all producers are quite on board with is that, you know, like, it's something like 98% of wine is consumed within 24 hours of purchase. So for me as a winemaker, like, that bottle's got to be ready to drink, you know, which was not always the case. You know, before, and especially in Napa, especially like, you know, Oregon and Washington, like, they're expecting you to put those wines away for 10 years. Like, people used to just cellar stuff. Like, they would taste things and they would taste it for the potential, or be like, yeah, I'll buy, you know, a vintage now and then drink it in 10 years. But like, people aren't doing that anymore. They go to the store, they buy the wine, and they bring it home and they drink it.
Yeah.
So my guess would be like, you know,
It wasn't ready.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I think people also just have an expectation of like Napa Cab that it is going to be big and just strong and astringent and like huge, and I don't know.
But this is like crazy how it's like, you said it's like a 15%. You don't taste this overwhelming amount of alcohol in it at all. Like, that's what's dangerous about this. I could like drink a bunch of this and be like, ooh, it's so smooth, it's so nice and light, and it's like, but it's still that cab that, you know, but it's not overwhelmingly like big or anything like that. It's still very like, I could drink this on its own and I would just enjoy sitting there and like drinking it. I love this wine.
Yeah.
So this is one that you're like about to put out?
Yes, we're just like literally waiting for labels.
Is this going to be a reserve? Okay, a reserve.
Yeah. And it'll be
And what year is this?
2019.
2019.
Price point will probably be, I don't price them.
60.
I wish that I could price it at 60. I think it deserves
So you submit
to be
all
at
the information
60.
about it and then somebody else prices it?
Yeah, it's probably going to be between 36 to 40.
That's insane. Okay.
Maybe 42.
So if you're listening to this,
This is a $36 bottle? $40?
Maybe, I would say like 42 max.
Under 50 for sure.
Yeah.
this
Under
is
50,
an
yeah.
amazing cab. This is like so good.
Yeah.
I was going to say, this drink's like a $60, $70
easy.
bottle
Yeah.
cab.
Yeah, I mean, in California,
good.
it would probably sell. I mean, if you look up, so the specific vineyard, it's Bettinelli Vineyard Sleeping Lady is they've got like a bunch of land, but it's
Is there a
named
picture
for
of
that.
a lady sleeping?
It
and that's
looks
how you
like
know
a
it's
woman
like,
sleeping on her side.
Oh, really?
That's why they called it that. And if you look up like that vineyard,
yeah.
other bottles from other producers, they're like $300 to $400.
Whoa.
Wow.
So I always tell like our staff, I'm like, if somebody's asking about this, just have them Google the vineyard,
Yeah.
and then they'll be delighted to pay, you know,
Whatever.
$15
Yeah.
a glass.
Yeah.
Like, it's a bargain. But you know, it is like flawless fruit. Like, it makes my job easy.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
get fruit like this.
Yeah.
And there's so much about winemaking too that like it just does what it wants to do. Like, this year was the first year where everything I got was 100% wild fermentation. So I didn't add yeast.
You didn't add yeast to it?
No, I added nutrient at some point, but it all got going on its own.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I do think it takes a really good winemaker to make a really good wine, though. So
Well,
props
thank
to
you.
you. Like, you know, don't sell
Yeah.
yourself short.
But I mean, it's like, but you know, and I think a lot of that too is like, do you have the ability to just let it do what it wants? Because some folks are like, nope, I've got to
You
get
gotta
in there.
rush it
and
out, yeah.
Like Chardonnay, it always comes in a little bit brown. So people immediately try to like fix the color or do things. And I'm like, no, it'll figure itself out. Like, I know that that's just going to like come off. Like,
Yeah.
it naturally, you know, it looks like apple juice when you first get it, and
Yeah.
it tastes like apple juice. And then it gets a little bit brown because it's cooking and it's doing what it wants to do. And then eventually all of that color just kind of wears off, and you're left with, you know, after all the leaves and everything settles, it is that pretty
Yeah.
lemon yellow that
Yeah.
you want it to be. And same with these, like sometimes we've had our Grenache that we had, that we got in 2018. I remember the color was like Pepto-Bismol pink. And I was like, what are we gonna do with this? Like, it looked like a rosé, but it was just a Grenache.
Yeah.
And it took forever to be ready, first of all. But I was just like, when will the color come around? So I think I took some Petite Syrah out of barrels and then immediately put the Grenache in. Like, maybe it'll pick up some of the color. And so you just have to mess around with it. But I was like, I don't want to blend it. Like, I want it to be just as it is. But
Yeah.
it took, I don't think we bottled it until January. I think it's what broke the bottling line. January of 2020. It took that long for it to like come around and be ready and be a color. And it still is like pretty light, but
Yeah.
man, they're fussy sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So what would you say is your favorite thing about winemaking and wine in general? Like, if you're like, man, in this life, what do I love about this thing?
Yeah. I mean, it's such a like, I don't know. It sounds like a little self-indulgent, but it's cool. Like, I feel like cool doing this job. And it's such a specific thing that, like, you know, there's a little bit of job security, just knowing that like people are always going to drink wine. They're always going to love doing that. But also like it is something that I think needs humans involved. You can't just have a machine make wine, and you know, it's never just like a recipe that you're using that you're like, yeah, just make it this way and it's always going to taste. Yeah, it shouldn't be. But there's so many factors that go into what, you know, the terroir of this, like how do things, what is the climate like? What's the elevation like? Did we have frost this year? Was there like, you know, this year we had everything ready super late. And last year everything was ready super early. So it's like all about the weather and did it rain at a weird time? You know, all the things that sommeliers love to talk about where they're like, oh, the rain that year was just tremendous. And it's like, no, I mean, you come and talk to us and we're like, oh yeah, the rain, like it was really horrible, or it came at the wrong time. Like we had a lot of rain right before we picked, which is scary for us.
Yeah.
And it will make the acidity go up in a weird way, or the pH go up. And so it's just like this year was a really weird year, and all of us, you know, it's nice to have a bunch of us working for the same company doing the same thing, because we can just call or like text each other and be like, is anyone else like, is this really weird for you?
Yeah.
And then this year I did all of our processing in Atlanta with our Atlanta winemaker, because I was like, I just, you know, it'll make my life a lot easier, his life a lot easier. So we were able to kind of do it together and really like bond over our crop and all the machinery that likes to break. Every year some piece of machinery breaks.
It sounds like it.
And you're like, God. Like last year it was our sorting table and our must pump. And we had like, you know, when you get people in, because we just bring in our staff, you only have them for like 8 hours. And so you're like, we got to get going. Like, so it was like, the must pump stopped working, so I was like, get it out of here, whatever, we'll do it without it. So we were sorting into bins, and then I would take the bins with the forklift, dump them into the tank, and then our sorting table kept shorting out because the plug was like wired incorrectly, and I was like, get the sorting table out. So we were just stemming into these bins, and it was like me with my head under these bins. We were like pulling out twigs and leaves and like bad berries and stuff. Like I had like 8 people just sorting out of these bins. And I've never like been so disgusting in my life, because grapes come in so sweet. It's like 10 times the sweetness of a table grape. And eventually, like right now, they're all dry, but it's disgusting.
Yeah, sounds like it. It's not glamorous, is it?
No, gosh.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's
Wine
the biggest
making
thing.
so glamorous.
You think we're like out in the vineyard, like, oh yes, look at all the beautiful leaves, and really we're just like, everything is hitting us in the ankle and the knee in the winery, and it's cold and everything's sticky, and yeah, it's an adventure. But it's great. I mean, I don't know that many people who
Get to do this.
yeah.
It's true.
And especially out here, like
Right.
that's what is so cool too about the company, is that we're all in these big cities that, you know,
Yeah.
there's no vineyards around us, and we're
Yeah.
surrounded by skyscrapers.
Well, and that's the thing we love about City Winery too, is you can come and enjoy some really, really nice wine
Yeah.
in the middle of skyscrapers
Yeah.
in downtown Nashville.
And it's made
It's one of our
locally.
favorite places, yeah, by a
Like,
local winemaker.
How cool is that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why we love this place and promote it all the time.
Yes. And I just want to thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
And
so fun.
yeah, I just think y'all need to support this place and try the wine because it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can just come buy the bottle too, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You can buy the bottle.
Bottle, glass,
Growler.
Yeah.
growler.
Yeah.
You guys are still doing live music shows
We are, yeah.
all the time.
We
So
have
good place to
classes.
see.
Yeah.
You have classes for
We've got like a pairing class series we're doing. So I think in early December we're doing like a cheesecake pairing class again.
Oh, cool.
Which will be indulgent.
And you just did the Harvest Festival, right?
Yes,
So
yeah. Our 5th annual Harvest Fest, and which is always like, once that's done, I get to rest a little bit. So.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'll be much more relaxed the next couple months.
And then the baby comes
And then the baby
in
comes.
Yeah.
January, and then you get
Yeah.
some time off. So
Yeah.
But there's so many events happening here all the time too.
all the time. Yeah. If you come to Nashville,
Yeah.
look at what's going on at
This
City
is just
Winery.
a place to visit.
Yeah,
It's
for sure.
so great. The wine's amazing. Just
Props
love
to
it.
you, Michelle. Delicious
you.
as always. Thanks for letting us try this stuff.
Thanks for coming.
Yes, sweet cheers.
Check out City Winery.
You don't have any.
I don't have anything.
Oh, it's okay.
It was so good I drank it. Cheers.
You pretending to drink something? There's nothing.
There was one little last sip. Got it.